Greetings, gamers, and welcome to Season 6, Episode 9 of Ropai Gamma, the Gamers Podcast. I'm your GM, Byron, and of course, joining me once again is my co-host, Howard.
Greetings, everyone, and we also have a special guest, my daughter, Evie, who may, in fact, make some commentary in the background. My apologies, but she really wanted to be part of the podcast today.
Well, considering you weren't here last week because she wasn't feeling well, how's she doing?
She is 100% better, which is great and horrible, because she is no longer sniffling and coughing and being miserable, but she's now back to her full top speed, which is about 10 miles an hour faster than I can go.
And actually, she just had a birthday, didn't she?
Her first birthday. Oh my god, dude. I have a 1-year-old. Can you imagine?
No.
Not only that, we had 20 people at her party. And it was amazing. We had, my parents and my sister and her husband and their kid, Ricky and his entire family. We had her parents and her brother and nephew and niece, and we had, like Jessica was there. Like we had a lot. I mean, we had a huge turnout, and the thing is, a lot of birthdays, the kid screams and fusses. This little girl, she played with everyone. She ran around. She had a good time. She didn't fuss. She smashed the cake she was supposed to smash. She was a perfect little bug.
Which means the second year is going to be hell.
Right. Of course, that was the first time we'd given her sugar, and that was interesting. After the fact. Jen's like, she's tired. She won't go to bed. And I'm like, yeah, we pumped her full of sugar. What do you expect? But man, when she crashed, it was epic. Like, she was gone. Like, it was like, ah! I was just dead.
Well, speaking of epic.
Yes.
This is this episode's going to be a little different than others because as last week we did End of an Era with like half of the Epic Game group.
Sorry, I couldn't make it.
Yeah, it's okay. It still went well. It was enjoyable. So, although there were some tech issues, Matt and
always are. Yeah,
Matt was echoing on Allison's mic, but yeah, again, it wouldn't be a real episode without some tech issues. But we were talking about and unfortunately, I just got that episode posted yesterday. My apologies.
Which I haven't listened to it, but I can't wait to. I'll probably listen to it later on tonight.
Cool.
Or tomorrow.
So, but hopefully I'll actually get this one posted on time too. But because it was interesting because you had suggested the topic End of an Era, and we were poised to. We actually recorded on Saturday night instead of doing a session of the Epic Game because you couldn't make it because of some mixed communication and whatnot, which was fine. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't. And again, the podcast was fun, although I kind of let Jay down because of that, and I feel bad about that. Sorry, Jay. I'll make it up to you. But not only were we going to bring in the Epic Game to a close, but also a gaming store in my old stomping grounds was closing their doors. So we talked about that, and then of course we also, like any other Ropai, we started segueing into other stuff. We actually we're giving Miri some good GMing tips and whatnot. She's really been earning her GM stripes here recently.
I heard.
And whatnot, but I remember you saying that we should probably do this episode to kind of almost do a GBU of the episode itself. And kind of pay homage to it. No, I think that's good But
also, I would also like to throw in or talk about some of let's peel back the curtain a little bit and see, talk a little bit how the sausage was made. Talk about some of the collaborative stuff. Like just sort of because putting something on like this, it's not the same. Going into it, it's not quite the same as a regular normal weekly thing. This was a little bit more, it's a little bit amped up. So it'd be kind of nice to talk about, what you were thinking about when you went into it, execution, how we work, that kind of stuff. And then just talk about how it went and highlights and that sort of stuff. So I'll let you, it's your baby.
All right. Well, I have you to thank for a lot of it too.
Thank you.
For the beginning. For the execution, the beginning, throughout, and definitely the finale. Definitely. Well, to all the players, but definitely props on you. But how I got started. I mean, I'd been gaming. I mean, because this almost went. Oh, it was a little over a year and a half. So I'd been gaming for about 18 years, give or take, when I finally got this started. And it was almost like another year before that, I had been hit by a bug. Not your daughter, because she wasn't a glimmer in your eye yet.
But she will smack the crap out of you.
No, I'm sure. That's some point.
You can have 5.
So, but I've been hit by a bug to really kind of up my gaming, up the gaming bar. I finally wanted to. I've been wanting to do either a story or a game, because I have tried taking a crack at writing a novel here and there. I've entered NaNoWriMo a couple of times. Never really won, but it's fun to try. But I wanted to finally do my what's the term? Like my opus?
I guess it'd be opus.
My crown jewel of a game. The game where, I mean, granted, a lot of the games I do, and actually you were just geeking out about one of them before we started recording. A lot of the games I do are very well remembered by my players, and I'm very happy for that. I'm very proud of that. It's one of those where, I'm not bragging when I say I'm a damn good GM, because I've got the players and the experience to back it up. I just have to point to you guys.
You've been doing it long enough.
Well, yeah, well. That too, I suppose, but that doesn't mean anything. I've seen some people just getting started out and do better than me.
Well, I mean, and I've seen some that never really got that good. So, but no, you do have both experience and talent, which are two nice ingredients to a good recipe.
Yeah, but I really wanted to do my epic game, which of course is what I started calling the bloody thing. And then I remember seeing the preview cinematic for Final Fantasy XIV, which is the MMO Final Fantasy. But it was the one that they redid, because they had done it, and then I guess it started flopping or whatnot, so they redesigned it, and they had like this big calamity happen in the world and kind of reset everything. And the cinematic was there's this battle going on between these, kind of fantasy traditionalists and these like steampunky, mechanized army. Which is actually very Final Fantasy, because, Final Fantasy, I know why they started calling it Final Fantasy, but by the time of about 7 on, I'm like, why are you even calling it fantasy anymore, guys?
Why are you calling it final?
Aside from the fact that the characters sometimes still swing swords, and there is still kind of magic in there, there's nothing fantasy about this anymore, guys.
And there's nothing final. It is the most ironic name of a video game ever.
Well, but do you know why they called it Final Fantasy?
No.
You don't actually know the story? Oh, okay. For when it was still Squaresoft, the guy who did it, like the company was going under, like the company was dying, and they let him do. He had this he had done other stuff, and before anyone crucifies me, I might be getting this wrong. I'm just going off of memory, but this is the general gist of it. The company was going under, and the guy who did create Final Fantasy had done other stuff, and they were like, but he had this idea for this fantasy game. And since the company was going under, they were like, you know what, screw it, go ahead, do it. And he called it Final Fantasy because he thought it was going to be the final game for the company. He thought it was going to be the company's last hurrah, not realizing that it took off like a beast and saved the company and started a genre beyond belief.
No, I get it, but I understand. Yeah. But like you're right, by Final Fantasy VII, it is neither final nor fantasy. Hence the most ironic video game ever.
Yeah. Although I do like. Actually, I was part of the beta for the redo of 14, partially because of the cinematic as well. But I actually like the fact that the MMO Final Fantasy 14 actually does go more back towards a fantasy look, at least for the most part. There's still the technology stuff, but that, at least from what I got from the cinema, because again I didn't play for very long. I was only a part of the beta for a bit. And then they were like, okay, we're going live, and now you have to pay money per month, and I'm like, haha, that's where I'm stopping, because I didn't have the money at the point.
That's generally where I stopped too.
But of course, the cinematic, it was the more kind of fantasy tradition versus the mechanized stuff. So I guess the mechanized stuff was in the world, just I never got around to it. But I like how it went back to a bit more of a fantasy feel of things. So I was happy with that. But so I'd seen the cinematic, and the this battle was going on, and then up above there's this moon with these like, it looks like these giant swords have been stuck into it. And the moon starts cracking, and like one of these swords falls like in the middle of this, between the two armies. And of course everyone was like, holy hell, what the fuck? And this dragon bursts out of the moon. Apparently the moon had been containing him. And he bursts out of the moon and then just starts weighing lace to everything around him. And like, these characters start like praying at these temples. And this I guess it's like really powerful mage starts like trying to like recast the binding to put back onto the dragon, and so like the moon like reforms around him, and these these sword things get pierced in again, but he breaks free again, and again just it's just waylasting to everything. And I was just like, first and foremost, it's beautifully done. It's Square Enix. It's beautifully done. The animation was great, and of course I went to school for animation, so I at least half know what I'm talking about. The detail was great. The animation was great. The modeling was fantastic. I was just watching that. I was like, this is fucking awesome. And it's what gave me the initial inspiration for the story for what became the Epic game. So I started mulling it around in my head and started forming it out more, and I didn't want to do this one half-cocked. As is what tends to be my usual practice of doing a RPG, is I get an idea and I just run with it. Because as I've discussed before, that is kind of my style, is I'm very off the cuff. I didn't want to do that this time because I was like, I wanted this game to be my game of games. So I wanted to prepare. Well, I was preparing. Not to necessarily say that a lot of preparation isn't bad, but when you're doing nothing but preparing and not coming anywhere close to actually starting the game, that's not good. And I don't remember if it was the kind of life coach that I'd bought a few sessions from because she was having a deal and she had worked with Liz. And Liz really liked her, so I chipped in on the deal as well. I don't remember if it was the life coach or if I had started seeing my therapist at the time. I don't remember which, but I remember one of them was finally just like, why don't you just? I was just like, I really want to get this started, but I want to make sure I'm ready. And they were just like, why don't you just go ahead and just start it? It sounds like you've got enough prepped in the beginning. Start it, and then you can still prep and prepare as you go. And I was like, you know what? They're right. If I don't start this now, I don't think I'm ever going to I don't think I'm ever going to feel like I'm ready for it. I don't think I'm ever going to get it started. So I did. And I knew that with a game like this, I needed the right players. I knew I needed the right players. So I handpicked the players. I didn't put out a like, hey, I'm doing this game. Who wants to go? No. This game was by invite only. And I know some people are listening to this or would have been a pick of mine, but because, I mean, had I had my choice, I would have picked all the best players I'd ever had. Unfortunately, I would have had a group of like 10 to 12.
You also have to consider personalities, and that's what a lot of people who just play don't understand as a GM is good games depend on good group cohesion, and you may have two players that individually are amazing and work well within their own groups, but you know for a fact that they would butt heads if they were actually ever in the same group.
Well, I didn't actually put that much thought along those lines with this group, believe it or not. But
I have to all the time.
Yeah, well, and I probably should in some cases. Hindsight being 20/20. But I did have to put in scheduling. I had to make sure that the group I picked could consistently meet the same time every week to get this done. And, you know, when I knew when I was free, and with people, you know, and then with the majority of the players, because I knew I wanted you, and I wanted Liz, and I wanted Matt, and I wanted Puff, and I wanted Miri. But at the time, Miri was not sure she was going to be able to make it because of her work, and Allison, Matt's wife, who both were on the podcast last week, was interested in playing, and I was like, well, I'm full right at the moment because I had how many I wanted, but I was like, it's looking like one of them might have to drop. If so, yeah, Allison, you can come in, sure. Miri did at the time, but then Miri, as bad as this sounds, Miri lost her job, which freed up her schedule. So I brought her. I went a little above my limit cap because I hadn't gamed with Miri yet. And I really wanted to, and I knew the potential she had. I knew she was going to work well, so I made it, you know, an exception, and I brought her in. But you know, because I mean, there were other people like Salo, Jay, you know, there were other people I would have liked to have brought in, but because of their life and work schedules, it wasn't going to work, and I couldn't, you know, I didn't want to have that. I wanted a dedicated group. So I handpicked them, as I just explained. Sent out the invitations. I actually wrote up an invitation to it and whatnot. I took some advice from you because I knew this was going to be a long-running game, and I don't do long-running games well. As much as I think we even talked about this either during the podcast or afterwards, because the Miri, Matt, and Allison, and I all like kept yammering after we finished recording last week, which was cool. As much as I love the fact of the idea of doing a long run game, like, cause like Miri said her father's crowning achievement was running a 5-year game. I know you've run a 10-year game. Granted, it wasn't like consistent all 10 years. I mean, there were big gaps of inactivity and whatnot because of life and whatnot. But the game didn't fall apart. You kept it together. Mm-hmm. And I remember you gave me some tips. That's where we got the Facebook group with. And since everyone who was in the group was in Facebook, it was a good way of relaying information quickly to the rest of the group and whatnot. So that's when I came up with the idea. You know, I had the idea for the Demon Dragon, who had been bound and now he was starting to break free again. And I remember when I originally approached people if they were interested in this game, I asked them what kind of characters they would like to have played. And then a lot of them, I think you may have been one of them, by the time I actually got started, had forgotten what they had suggested. I know Matt had like almost completely forgotten what he had originally wanted to play. But I took a little control in the character creation, at least in terms of like the backstory, because I wanted to make sure that everyone, I could tie them all in together easily. So I didn't let everyone do willy-nilly character creation. I was like, okay, what would you like to play? They're like, okay, I would like to play this kind of character. I was like, okay, well, how about this? You know, and most people were like, yeah, sure. And you know, I think there was one or two who was like, well, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But so I had the players, I had their characters, and then I remember bringing them all together. And overall, wonderful experience.
I agree.
Absolutely wonderful experience. Not to say that we didn't have our pitfalls, not to say we didn't have our hurdles. I mean, this was not a perfectly flat, straight road. We definitely had our issues. Some of which were, well, I being the kind of person I am and the kind of GM I am, I'm going to say most of them were my fault. Some of them did, get perpetuated from the players, but overall, I especially now that the game is over with, I can honestly say I picked the right players for this because you all, because you're one of them, you all definitely, and you all knew what I was going for going into this. I told you guys, I was like, this is what I'm looking for. I was like, I wanted this to be my Lord of the Rings. I wanted this to be my Wheel of Time. I wanted this to be my epic game.
I will say this. There was a great deal of chemistry, actually. You did a good job selecting the group. And another thing I noted, and it's something, have you ever seen, well, I mean, I know you've seen all the Facebook memes where you have, like, the comic where it says, what you plan or hope that your game is going to be, and it's like, I am Sir blah blah blah. I will vanquish you, and I will help you. The very whatever, and then the real, it's like, I think I'm just gonna, shoot. Now, what's this do? Okay, all right. Another person's over there snoring. You've seen, those memes.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is,
I love the ones like what the game starts out being, and it's like a picture of them at Helm's Deep from Two Towers. Is what the game ends up being is,
Monty Python's,
Search for the Holy Grail.
But the thing about this group, I mean, there was a great deal of really good in-character role play, very epic moments. There were incredible monologues, in-character conversations that really had the feel. There wasn't a lot of slaps. I mean, we would laugh out of game, but like once the scene started, we really did. I mean, we were on point, and it was had a very epic feel because of that. Everyone, people weren't trying to play the stupid character. Because sometimes you get a game where one guy's like, I'm going to be the comic relief, and he's always being the comic relief, and every time you have a serious moment, they're trying to lighten the mood, even when you don't need to.
Yeah.
Not that there wasn't comedy, and a lot of the comedy that we had was thematically appropriate. Sometimes the interactions between like Othello and Kieran were very warrior-esque. Like they would pass jokes back and forth that were very dry. Mm-hmm. Like commentary on what's like, oh my, I don't know what was happening is like, or indeed, like something happened, like or when we were facing the first dragon or whatever, and Kieran says something, and Othello's like, indeed, and it was just funny, but it was funny in like a Lord of the Rings type funny rather than a funny in a Monty Python way.
Yeah.
So there was a great deal of, you're right, you told us what you were going for, you picked the right group. There's an incredible amount of chemistry between us all. And there was also, like I said, a lot of good role. I do want to say one thing though. So we had one couple in the game, right?
Yeah.
Matt and Allison.
Yeah.
What I love about
Liz and myself were in the game.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm talking about
players.
as far as the players, because one of you is the GM. What I love about this game was the fact is that the couple there were relationships among the party members, but it wasn't a couple.
Yeah.
That to me, like that blew my mind. When they came up with that, I was like, oh my god, that is cool. The level of maturity, that sold me. That was actually one of the moments where I knew you really had a winner. That doesn't happen. It
does. It can.
It can, but it's not often.
I've seen it. I've seen it before. Not often. You're right, but I have seen it before.
And they did beautifully. They all did beautifully, and I really think that added something to it.
Yeah, I would agree as well. So, but
well, she was trying to eat plastic. She reaches for plastic to eat it, and then I take the plastic away, and then she gets mad because Daddy wouldn't let her eat plastic.
Of course. So. Now.
You're talking about preparation. One of the things, we did this all online with Roll20, obviously. Mm-hmm. And, that takes, to do it right, it takes quite a bit of preparation. And, from the first mission in the church, which I remember, by the way.
That horrific battle I had. Oh, I had too many things going on.
Oh, that was beautiful. And then, of course, was it the ring or the wand of summon party guest?
I think it was ring.
So the ring of summon party guest, which I really want to make an actual official item, because that would be freaking awesome.
That and the dustpan, you bastards.
Dustpan. I know, right? Those are my favorite moments.
It's like you and the boots.
Yes, the boots.
And see, the thing is I'd already had something like that happen in a game before, which is why when you all started obsessing about it, that's why I got so flustered. Okay, for those listening, because at this point in time I'm going to have to explain. There was a scene in the Epic game where Othello, who is a half-orc fighter, he's a half-orc, but he was raised by humans on a border country against butting up against the Orcish tribal lands, and the Duke's son had been killed by an Orcish raid, and he raided the tribe to the point of extinction. But during one of the raids, they found this half-orc child, and so he took the child as his own and raised him up as, it was kind of like, well, you took my son, I'm taking this. So he, Matt was playing, and Matt even said, like, his inspiration for the character was Worf from Next Generation, from Star Trek. The single Klingon in all of the Federation. He was the single half-orc in this whole, human society. So, very intimidating, figure. So there was at one point he went down to the dungeons to try to interrogate someone that you all had captured of the enemy. But in the process of interrogating him, and he was just kind of like staring the guy down. The demon dragon starting to have influence in the world fried the guy so he wouldn't talk. And of course, Othello was like, I was staring at him and then he burst into flames. So he was like, the guard was like, what happened? And Othello was just like, I'm going to need a dustpan. And like, then everyone in the group starts obsessing over this goddamn dustpan.
The golden dustpan of doom.
And I was flustered because in a previous game, I think I've talked about this in the podcast before. In a Star Wars game, I had a group. Actually, it was the Horde in Northern Virginia when I was going to college. I was doing a Star Wars game, and there was this end table that just this end table had been kind of useful / important in this building. The building blew up, and then as they were coming back to the hideout, I just as a gag, I had that the smoking end table landed near them. And of course Liz was playing this like kind of savage character, and so she thought that the end table had the soul of their commander who I had just killed off. And so they started obsessing over this end table for like no reason. I'm like, what the fuck? It was meant as a gag. And now I'm like kicking myself. And that's, so when you guys started doing that with the dustpan, I was having flashbacks of the end table, and I'm just like, God damn it. And I remember you telling me about you had a player character that obsessed over this pair of boots.
Yeah, the disruptor blast, and he blew a guy up, or vaporized a guy, and I made the comment, it's like, all that's left is a smoking pair of boots. And I moved on. It's like, all right, you go to the door and see, and he's like, wait. So the boots, are they nice boots? And I'm like, I don't know, they're decent. And he's like, I dump out the feet and put the boots on. I'm like, what? I want the dead man's boots. And so like the dead man's boots became a thing. That and a dead man's watch that he picked up later. But anyway, I gotta say the summon party guest and the dustpan were two epic moments, like truly epic moments. There were things that we really sort of, some of the first things that we really, rallied around, as a group, even though it was sort of out of game.
I suppose.
I thought it was very cool. Oh, I took away her plastic. But anyway, what I was saying though is, it was it took a lot of prep work. We did a lot of map work. I mean, One of the things about this epic game that I liked is it had a great deal of visual throughout. Like, and we talked about in a previous podcast, and the one we're talking about using props, where you use maps when it was appropriate, but you also use backdrops, and I did like that. That was a nice thing that added a cinematic epic feel to it.
Yeah,
because there were visuals. We had a lot of visual aid. So not only did we have the character interactions, we also were seeing something on the screen that helped set us into the mood, like the city, like the flying city, and then Arcadia, and then you used when we were in the golden empire, you had the picture of like the city, like basically hidden city. It's having a fantasy version, and it helped. And then of course I helped you with the maps where we actually had the Valkyrie. We actually had a map of the Valkyrie. So when we were flying around fighting on this flying ship, we actually had a flying ship like on the screen that we were running around on. And I think that really helped with the game by providing context clues. It was just yet another thing that made this game better.
Okay. I mean, well, and of course you helped with with the maps a lot as well, which I was again very thankful for, because
I have to say that last one was beautiful though. That last one
was pretty banging. I think my favorite map though was you did the map, but I did the setup. Was for the massive army battle to defend the ritual.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't remember. Were you there for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying at the beginning. Yeah, I think you were.
Yeah.
But like when I loaded up the map, and of course there was so much on the map, it took a while to load up on everyone's screen. But then Matt finally was just like, "Oh shit!"
Yes.
When he said that, I was like, "That is exactly." Because when he saw like all the forces that your side had, and then all the forces you all had to deal with, when he was like, "Oh shit," I was like, "That is exactly the response I was going for."
Oh, no, that was absolutely beautiful. And I told you before. I told you after the fact during the ugly GBUs that the going back and forth on strategy and tactics was some of the most fun I've had in a game in a long time. It felt very epic because we weren't doing nitpicky things. What we were doing is we were making decisions which were affecting armies, but they had an effect. And that you personally of all the individual sessions you ran, to me that one and the final boss fight were two of the best as far as timing, as far as skill, as far as player interaction, but narrative. I mean, it was amazing, dude. That particular game, that one in the final boss fight. Not that the other ones were great. I mean, there's some moments that I absolutely love, but I'm talking about from your GMing perspective. Those two, phenomenal.
Well, thank you. So, but yeah. So I'm I'm really not sure what else to say about this.
Well, see, you. I guess for you, you're I guess or spent one. You already talked about it with the group. So I mean, I'm going to listen to it. But what did they have to say about it? What did they have to say coming to the end of it? What were their expectations?
We hadn't had the final session. But
I know, but
last week, but
they probably talked about expectations.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm trying to remember because again, we were all over the place last week, but I mean, the overall general gist was, although everyone was kind of sad that it was going to be coming to an end, most of them were kind of happy it was too, because it was one of those. Because I think I mentioned I was just like, I don't think I could have carried it on much further, because either I would have to have been either that or we would have had this great moment and then I'd have to try to constantly be one-upping myself if I was going to continue this game any further. I compared it to Dragon Ball Z. I'd have to constantly be bringing out this bigger, badass villain to be challenging. Which, of course, sometimes I felt like, as you all were building up to the dragon, I was having issues finding stuff that was a challenge for you guys. Which again, I'm glad I learned my lesson then too. But either that or I would have done this big thing and then it just nothing else would have compared. It would have gotten to the point where I would be like running the game into the ground. I didn't want to do that either. So as sad as people were that it was ending, everyone was glad where it was ending and when it was ending, and they were looking forward to. Of course, I was nervous as hell initially. Because
and we talked.
Yeah, we talked. Well, I mean, the group did too, because they were like, don't be worrying about you know, because I was really fretting over the mechanics because like in other instances in the game, there have been times I'd thrown NPCs at you guys and either, you know, and most of the time usually you all waltzed right through them. I mean, you all it was like paper people.
Like the one fight with the guy in the necromancer in the library.
Oh God, yes.
That was one of the like as far as like, you know, I felt bad for you, son, man. I was like, when I hit him, I was like, oh crap.
I was underestimating you guys some.
And so I can see how that could have had a, you know, that could have been sort of a shadow, because it's like, you know, you have memories of those moments, and
Yeah.
so you want to make sure that didn't happen.
And so I was really beefing up the final boss, but then I was afraid I was going to be beefing him up too much, and then he TPK everyone. So I was really fretting back and forth, and everyone in the group was like, dude, don't worry about the mechanics, just worry about the story. You know, because because they're like the final fight really isn't what we're looking forward to. It's the epilogue afterwards. It's like that's what's really going to make it epic. That's what's really gonna what we're gonna remember. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been in instances where we've had a final fight and it's been lackluster, and that does taint the memory of the game. You know, I've had times where the final fight was completely epic, and that's what I really remember about the, you know, that's kind of the high point I remember of the game. And then I've had final fights where it's just kind of like, you know, and although the game was good, that did taint it. And they were like, yeah, we can kind of understand that. And I was like, and also because like in the terms of the narrative, I've already got that down for the most part. I was like, the reason why I'm not worried about that is because I already know how this is really going to wrap up. But, you know, so that's why I was fretting about the mechanics, because that's all I had to fret about. It's like the story I had. But then, you know, and you and I were in collusion together for certain things.
Always are.
Not to spoil it to anyone, but if they really didn't know, then, well, I guess I'm really that good.
Well, I mean, heck, I'd been making the maps. Everyone knew I was making the maps for you, so I had to know something.
Yeah, well, and I think people don't. I'd also been bouncing ideas off of you to begin with as well.
Well, and the other thing is I mean, and the stuff that we were colluding on had primarily to do with, you know, I mean, world stuff and you know, maps and things like that, and some strategy and tactics. The actual, you know, inner workings of the story. I was, and actually, I kind of wonder if anyone would wondered if I knew it was happening before it happened, and only in very unique and rare circumstances did I have foreknowledge.
Yeah. So, but you and I talked because obviously well, first I was calling to make sure you were actually going to be able to make it, because there was a bit of concern that you wouldn't, and I was just like, yeah, man. He's like, you ready for this? And I'm like, I don't know, man, you know, because I'm like, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, I'm worried about that, and finally you were just like, dude, don't shoehorn it. You know, don't shoehorn it. Just like let it flow, let it play out. He's like, you're better than this. You'll make it work. Da 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 da. And I was like, yeah, all right, yeah, you're right. And that's exactly what I did, and it flowed perfectly.
It did.
I'll fully have to admit I had to fudge a few things, but what GM doesn't?
No, I mean that's part of it. I mean, fudging it for the story is important. So, fudging it to be a dick is bad.
And I'm really glad that everyone kind of liked the special guest we had for the finale, because I was able to. I knew for a while that I was like, I don't want to control Dharma Gorgonoth. I don't want to control the Demon Dragon for the final fight. I was like, because originally I was, I had envisions of actually kind of doing this whole party thing, trying to get everyone together in person, and I had envisions of it being a bigger fight than it was originally. So I was just like, I don't want to be bogged down with having to control not only the Demon Dragon, but all of his demon hordes, you know, that you're all going to have to fight through to get to him in the first place. So I was just like, I want someone else to control Dharma Gorgonoth. And I thought of who I could call upon. And at this point, Jay had actually been able to join the game for a little bit as an NPC that I was able to create and make for him and bring in. So that was cool. So I was like, all right, well, Jay's already in it. Can't call on him. And then it dawned on me, I was just like, my brother, Joe.
Joe did an amazing job. I don't think he realized how amazing that was. And that's the first time I've ever played with Joe?
Yeah. No,
I've been saying I wanted to play with Joe for a long time, and this time I had to, fight him.
Well,
he ended up eating me.
And it added a very personal edge to it as well, in a good way. It added a very personal edge for me, because Joe was the one that got me into gaming. Because he had been playing AD&D with his friends and our cousins for ages, and I was always like, what is this? What's this about? Now, I'll admit that Joe, at the time, now granted, it may not necessarily have been Joe, I might have been too young, I'll admit. But when Joe first tried to teach me and tried to, I finally talked him into trying to run me in something, didn't go over too well. And I think part of that was because either I didn't have the knowledge basis that I needed, or Joe hadn't taught it well to me enough. I don't know which, because it was ages ago. So that's why I always attribute Joe's to getting me into gaming. It was Cyrus that really taught me how to game. And then it was Cyrus and Jay that really taught me how to GM. But Joe was the one that got me into it. Joe was the one that introduced me to it. He was the one that kind of hooked me initially.
That had to be awesome to actually have him in the game, your final game for your epic game. That had to be sweet.
That's what I was saying. That was the personal edge, because it almost has like kind of brought things full circle, you know. And Joe, of course, now Joe hasn't gamed in ages, because he just life and just he kind of got out of it. But of course, just as I was really getting into it. And he and I never really gamed much either, because the one initial game he tried to run me in, and then I remember I tried to run him in a game like one Christmas one year or something, like shortly after 3rd edition had come out. And well, no, I take that back. There was the invasion. So my apologies. Because actually twice Joe has let me gather up a bunch of friends and come and invade his place and do a weekend of gaming. And the first time was I was dating Christy, and I think he was in Richmond. And he ran a game, AD&D. And I had gathered, it was Christy and Jay and Salo and Cyrus and a bunch of guys from RMA that were local. And like I said, I grabbed Christy and Cyrus as well. And, we all went down to his place and did a weekend of gaming. And then, when he moved away from Richmond and back into Richmond, that's where we got the name for the Horde, for that gaming group from, my coworkers and whatnot at Harris Teeter and their friends and whatnot, because we went and invaded his place. And I ran, the Wheel of Time stuff from the pre-gen book, for the Wheel of Time game. So I take that back. I have game with Joe, some, not a lot, but some. But it was really, and of course I love the fact that for like the whole week beforehand, I was having to coach him on what the fuck to do, because he had no clue about Pathfinder. The D&D he knew still had THAC0 and all this, that. And I made the character sheet and Hero Labs and sent it to him, and he's like, what the is all this gobbledygook you've just sent me? And so, it was kind of interesting, working with him to coach him up on being able to do the Demon Dragon. And I kept his identity a bit of a secret from the group, because, again, I kind of wanted to surprise them as to, I just kept mentioning I was going to have a special guest for the finale. So I coached Joe. I was teaching him, basically what to do and how to do it. I not only had to coach him in Pathfinder, I had to coach him in Google Hangouts, because he had never used Google Hangouts before, and I had to coach him in Roll20. So I had to meet up with him one night and be like, all right, here's Roll20, here's how you use it, da-da-da-da-da. And of course, on the one hand, he was just kind of like, wow, all this technology. On the other hand, he's just like, what the fuck am I doing? So,
dude, he did an amazing job. I think we need to like send him like a thank you card. I mean, or something.
I thanked him a bunch, at the end of the game, because of course he had to bow out as we were doing the epilogue stuff. And then I sent him a voicemail and thanked him again, because, he even said to me, he's just like, I didn't really do all that much, but I tried to explain in the voicemail. I was like, dude, you did more than you realize, if for no other reason than you took something major off of my mind, off of my plate, so that I could focus on the rest of it. And as I even explained to him, I was just like, to me, for me to run Dharma Gorgonoth, I was going to be underhanded. I was going to metagame a bit because I'm the fucking GM, you know. I know the group really well, but for Joe to control the Demon Dragon, granted the Demon Dragon knew the opponents well, but he knew from what his cult had been telling him, which was kind of an edge of realism because Joe knew the group because of what I was telling him. So in my mind, the synergy was really nice. It really worked out. And I am very thankful for him taking the time to learn that, to do that for me. It was really good. And yeah, I'm gonna have actually his birthday's coming up here soon too, so I'm gonna have to do a little something for him.
You gotta give me his address. I think I definitely need to send him like from the players like a thank you card, because that was really cool.
I'm thinking about posting something in the Facebook chat and be like, guys, I really want to do something for Joe as a thank you. What can we put together? So actually, if you want to post that, be my.
I'll probably go ahead and post it.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. I have two questions. One, did you talk to anyone after the fact? What did they feel about losing a party member, the end fight? Did you hear anything? Did anyone say anything about that?
Oh, the fact that we lost you?
Yeah.
The RP of how they played the characters losing you, I thought was beautiful.
It was very touching.
In the terms of the players, I think they were, on the one hand, they were kind of like a little sad, but
which is understandable and expected.
Yeah, but on the other hand, they were like, well, it was you, and I think they did kind of expect that you would kind of go, balls to the walls, be the spearhead of it all, which you did. Which unfortunately, oftentimes will get your ass killed. So,
well, the RP afterwards was really touching, and a couple of times people were actually, I heard some tears, like some actual tears. From some of the people,
from me among other people.
Not just you. I
know. It's like
I heard some
Miri
tears.
was breaking up. I think Puff did a little too.
Oh my god! I was over here getting a little misty-eyed.
When I was RPing your father, like your parents, when they finally had to break the news to your character's parents, oh
my god,
get together.
Oh, they were too. It was. I mean, there was a definite sense of mourning. That was amazing. I mean, how often do you get that in a game where there's such a sense of mourning? And they came together. Like, honestly, I also was very silent during a lot of that stuff. During the battle, I was talking stuff, but as soon as the epilogue came, I didn't want to ruin it by my voice because
you were gone.
I wanted there to be silence.
Yeah, because your character was dead.
And I hope everyone understood what I was doing, and I think it did add to it, because then my voice was gone. I mean, there's a victory celebration, and there's no Kieran's voice.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
I did too. I knew exactly what you were doing too, because when you started shutting up, at first I was just like, "What is it?" Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So
very cool. All right,
yeah.
I do have another question for you when we finish answering this one.
Okay. Well, as I say, but in the terms of losing people, like I said, they were a little sad. I did end the game with a cliffhanger. Because about halfway through the game, I'd actually come up with a possible sequel. Because I kind of figured you were going to bite it.
Yeah.
Of all the characters, I kind of figured you were going to bite it. In fact, I was kind of gearing for it a bit.
Well, dude, I told you I was going to run straight up. I mean, look, before the battle, Puff was talking about strategy and tactics, and okay, all right, let me back up. Through this entire thing, I've been sort of a sounding board. Even though Othello, Matt's character, was the main commander, I was, basically the strategic advisor. And through the entire thing, I've been coming up with some pretty elegant and creative strategy and tactics for overcoming our foes. Then when the final boss fight comes in, Puff, her character, they're asking us, well, what kind of strategy and tactics should we use? And I said, you know what? Swarm him. Just get in there and beat the crap out of him. And she's like, what? I'm like, you know what? There's a time for beautiful strategy and tactics, and there's a time just to kill something. And I think this is a time just to kill something. And so I told them, I said, whoever gets there first, get in and get your hits quick before he has a chance to do anything. And so I pretty much told you, like, to set it up that, as soon as I have an opening, I'm going for it, even if it kills me.
And I geared it. I geared it for you.
And it killed me.
Yep. So,
but in an awesome way. I still got some beautiful hits in though.
Oh yeah,
that last round before I went, okay, fine, Othello, you beat me.
That last round, that was the first round, you fucker.
Well, it was my last round.
No, it was your actions in the second round that you really got to shine, and then he ate you. And I literally, people, like, Joe crit on a bite attack, and I had him to where he just fucking swallowed him.
Yeah, I got eaten by the demon dragon. But it was, hey,
demon
but if you're going to go out
too.
What?
It was actually the demon head that did it.
You know what? But if you're going to go out, you might as well go out like a boss, right?
Yeah. So, but, I had come up with the idea of a possible sequel, continuing this. I wasn't going to do it. I definitely still wanted a break between, but and some people were kind of iffy about the idea. So I knew it was going to be a bit of a gamble to begin with, but I was like, you know what? Oftentimes the good stories do have that little bit at the end, that sequel hook that could a sequel may never actually be made or be told, but there's that possibility that's there. So I came up with the idea that one way or the other, the demon dragon was going to find a way of kill you and capture your soul. And the player characters weren't going to know that initially. They were going to find out later by an NPC. And basically the NPC was going to be like, ask them to quest to go and rescue your soul from the abyss itself. And of course I laid that out, and overall people thought it was, I mean, okay. There were definitely some mixed feelings about it, and I'm okay with that. Overall, people thought it was a cool idea, and it was a cool way to end the story right there, with that kind of cliffhanger. I did have one player that though she didn't mind the cliffhanger, she didn't like what I did to your soul. She really felt that after everything Kieran had done, he deserved to have his soul go basically to heaven. And she said that was really, that bit was really the dick move. And some people thought she didn't like the cliffhanger at all because of that. And she was like, no. She actually had to explain. She's like, I don't mind the cliffhanger. I don't even mind what we have to go do. But she's like, just the fact that he didn't get the reward that, she felt that Kieran was supposed to get, she thought was really bad. And that soured it for her. And I accept that. I understand that. And like I said, I knew it was kind of a bit of a gamble to do in the first place. And even Puff had kind of said, yeah, that did kind of suck, but she was very overall, she liked the idea more, overall anyway. So,
I mean, personally, I had no issue with it. Like, I honestly, because if I had been the demon dragon, I would have done something like that. I would have made sure that even if I were defeated, then there was a contingency plan.
Yeah,
because the person I would have targeted would have been Kieran.
Yeah, well, and even like when I was talking with Joe and telling him like the overall kind of idea and tactics that I was recommending to him, he was like, he was like, you really want a gun for Howard? And I was like, Howard's the paladin. For a demon dragon, Howard is the numero uno threat. I was like, none of the other players singly can come, Othello to an extent, and actually Othello was the one that eventually did kill the dragon.
But he used a couple crits to do it. But I mean, truth be told,
he actually twice, and then crit threat for a third time. But truth be told, in the entire group, Kieran was the single greatest threat out of that whole group. So it's like, it makes perfect tactic sense to gun for you first. The fact that you basically brought yourself up on a silver platter just helped matters.
Oh my god, that last fight was just, it was the timing, the flow, it was about as perfect as a combat as I've ever seen done. And that's including my games and anyone I played in. That is
saying something, and I thank you for that.
It was just beautiful. I mean, it was gorgeous.
What's your second question?
Are you going to do it again? Not soon, but are you going to do it again? Are you going to go for?
Okay. I was going to say that needs some clarification because that's a very open-ended, vague question. clarify for me here.
Are you going to attempt another long-running epic type game? In a
Yes.
couple years.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I can already tell you yes. Are you kidding me? I came up with yet another idea for another epic story like this when I was just starting this one. So, and actually, it was very, very cliche, classical fantasy story. Actually, was coming up with the idea of a dragon slaying adventure, with a bit of a twist at the end. The dragon is absconded with the princess, and the king is offering a large reward if anyone goes and saves the princess and kills the dragon. Very a stereotypical fantasy story. But of course, as we've said on this podcast before, the cliches are cliche for a reason. They work.
They do.
But of course, I was going to throw a bit of a twist at the end and whatnot. And I will actually say that some of the times I have done my Star Wars games with the Sith Council, the times I can actually bring the Sith Council game fully to a close, oftentimes they are rather epic as well. So I'm not trying to say like the other groups I have don't compare. Every group has its special, unique something to it.
As I said at the beginning of this was a specific type of game.
Yeah, because like the sorry to interrupt. But the Star Wars games, I was just doing that just to, okay, here's my campaign, here's the group, let's go, and it developed into an epic story.
Do you know what the difference is?
I was building it from the off to be what it was.
That's the difference. This one involved a certain amount of player involvement and not scripting necessarily, but buy-in, and everyone who came
specifically built framework.
Exactly, it was very specific. Yeah. So that's why the cohesion worked. That's why we did have the more of the in-character epic roleplay, that sort of stuff, because walking in the door, it wasn't one of these things where you walk in and it's like, hey, we want to play a Star Wars game? Okay, here's a character, let's go play. And it ends up being epic. What you did is you said, all right, I'm taking quality, players who I know have experience, and we are building a story that's specifically attempting to achieve this end result. And it worked. I gotta say, dude, like, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And again, as I've said it before and I'll say it again, I have a lot of that to thank to the players. Because if it was, if I had picked the wrong group, or if just the group hadn't meshed well, this would have fallen apart. This would have fallen apart. This would have crashed and burned horrifically, and I would have been devastated to an extent. Now, granted, I've had games blow up, I've had games fall apart, and I've picked myself back up. And actually, we covered that in last week's episode with Miri, because she's just like, I've never brought a game to an official close yet. And of course, Matt and I both were like, you will. Yeah, I mean, it'll take time, because I mentioned it took me over 6 years before I brought my first game to a close.
And no, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Of course, Matt being the cocky ass that he was like, my first game I brought to a close. I'm like, you shut up. But we also talked about
3 episodes.
Huh?
It was only 3 sessions.
Was it?
I'm kidding. I'm ripping Matt.
See, I was like, was it really? Because if that was, I was like, dude, that doesn't even count. That's the little fucker.
I'm hoping Matt's listening to this.
I hope so too. What was I saying? She was also worried about having a game fall apart, having a game blow up in her face. And of course, Matt and I both were like, you will. And like Matt and Allison and I, all three, were just like, you might as well resign yourself to the fact now that it is going to happen. What works best is how you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and continue on afterwards. And I was like, unfortunately, that's a learned skill. Because I mean, we can coach all we want, but it's and of course, I even told the story about the game that literally blew up in my face so fast I had no chance to stop it.
And we've talked about that a couple of podcasts, and it's always rough.
I told the story again because Matt and Allison both knew the people that were involved in that game, that the tension was and what caused it to blow up. They knew both of them. So, because when I mentioned who, they were like, oh, those guys. I'm like, yeah, those guys. And Mary, because Mary was like, I was just like, I had a game blow up literally in the span of 3 seconds. And she was like, what, really? I was like, yeah, I had no chance for damage control whatsoever. I was like, I thought everything was hunky dory. Next thing I know, people are handing me character sheets.
But you know what? It doesn't just happen in games. I'm trying to do like organization stuff for games, like for the Justice in Life, and stuff blows up all the time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's something with gamers. I don't know what it is. It's just ridiculous. Passionate people.
On the one hand, it's always a joke that, the gamers and nerds are the socially inept, but then we shoot back at the fact that it's like, yes, we're the socially inept playing a game that requires social activity. But then on the flip side, it's like, unfortunately, the only social activity we have is a bunch of social inept people. So therefore,
It causes
we
problems.
gamers are a little skewed of a group.
We are, and it does cause problems. I even tonight I'm dealing with like a big, blow up, whatever you're talking about it, and it's just, but it's involving games, and it's just like it's amazing how that happens. But anyway,
I got a question for you real quick.
Ask me.
Do you think I should run this campaign again?
With a different group?
Yeah.
Possibly. I would, obviously not with the same group. Now, the second chapter, heck, I'd play in that. But this actual game,
the actual, Dharma Gorgonov breaking free with a new fresh group. Do you think I should do it again?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Compare it and see how it goes.
I had, and that was kind of the thing. I was like, I had the idea of running that with another group. On the one hand, I felt bad because I was like, I almost feel like I'd be, kind of smearing your all's legacy with the game. On the other hand, it's like I learned a lot from when the beginning of the game to the end of the game. I learned a lot, and I think, I could definitely, polish out, smooth out a lot of the rough edges. And I'd be interested to see how another group could take it. So, but I wanted to see what you thought of that. What?
No, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think it'd be very cool to do, and you get to see, I mean, like I said, you'd have the experience, you'd have, a lot of the information down, maps and things like that, and I think it'd be a great experience for them.
There's that too. So, okay.
Another thing you could do, another funny thing you could do, which if you don't want to do the exact same one, and actually I thought about this, and even for us possibly or another group, do a game. So we defeated Dharma Gorgonov, right? But he has my soul, and even if we succeed in getting my soul, it'd be very cool if he actually was using me to basically power a way for him to come back, like in 1,000 years. It'd be very cool to play a game 1,000 years later. Dharma Gorgonov is returning, but we are the legends. Like this game is the legend.
Yeah, because like that was the thing that because you all were trying to, you all had heard about the ritual that bound Dharma Gorgonov originally, and you all were trying to piece together what to do and what happened and why it didn't fully work and everything. So you all were dealing with the legend of that. And yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to do a game where it was you all, or even I could even twist it a little and say it was your group that originally bound him.
Well, no, I'm thinking about doing a game for you with another group that is literally 1,000 years afterwards, and Dharma Gorgonov is returning. Now you need to figure out how he comes back, and we need to figure out some sort of a
freaking Draco Lich is what he'd be.
Right. But
God, I thought he was bad enough already.
Figuring out, how he gets back and the whole thing with Kieran. But what would be very cool with that is like, so they play the game.
Dude, God damn it.
Yes.
Dude, you just gave me the idea. You just gave me the idea.
We come back as cameos.
I now know how it would work. You fucking son of a...
And we could come back as cameos. Like, when they figured out, you could call me up or whatever, whichever one of us you wanted to be there, either in spirit or, for example, I mean, heck, Ella could still be alive. I mean, she's a dragon.
Well,
and the thing is...
Ella, she was a dragon disciple, but...
Well, I could be an angel or come back, but the thing about it is wouldn't it be awesome to do all these things, and then your players from this one, maybe I could do it or someone else, could come back and cameo at different points in the game, and then when the player characters, and don't tell them necessarily that the other guy, this was a game after a game. But when we come back, they slowly begin to realize, like, holy crap, we are actually playing the 1,000-year adventure of another game. Like, the moment they realize that, you would become a god. You would quite literally just transform into god. Sprout wings, halo, the whole 9 yards.
Have my horns holding up the wings.
Of course.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Well, if we're about to wrap this thing up, because I can hear it in your voice, I do have one thing I have happen.
What's up?
Because you have made me do this crap every game I've been in for this frickin' Epic game, so I'm now going to do it to you.
What?
No weaseling out of it, and you got to be honest and think about it and give me thoughtful answers.
All right.
For the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to hear the GM give his GBUs.
Now, some of the other groups will do this to me too, but not to the extent that I think you're asking me of it. So
this is what I'm asking for you.
Now, to explain, in case people don't know, they're listening. GBUs are good, bads, and uglies. This is a gaming tradition I picked up from a player at AIW. It's actually Sako, who, like Miri, her family gamed, so like she grew up gaming. And it was something that I don't even remember where she picked it up from. I know it wasn't originally her. I don't think it was originally hers. It might have been. I don't know. But anyway, it was a tradition that once I heard about it, I was like, this is fucking brilliant. And I've incorporated it ever since. So you tell one good thing that you liked about the game. You're supposed to keep it at one. I do have some people, and especially in my Lucky 13 group, that go on and on about, the good stuff. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, that's great. On the other hand, I'm like, I'm trying to wrap this up so we can go. So it's like, keep it to one, guys. But you're supposed to give one good thing you liked about the game. You're supposed to give one bad thing, that you didn't like about the game. And I usually have to put the caveat that it has to be something that the GM actually has control over. Because oftentimes, like, again, my Lucky 13 group will either be like, well, I can't really think of a bad, whereas I'm of the opinion, I'm like, there's always room for improvement. Or they'll be like, the weather sucked. I'm like, I have no control over that, you guys. So it's like, what really does that hurt? So it's one good thing, one bad thing. And then the ugly is you're supposed to pick someone else in the group. Can't be yourself. And as much as people have tried, I tried not to have it pick an NPC because you can't really give the GM an ugly. But you pick someone else in the group that did something that you felt deserved extra experience or an extra reward. So that's what the good, bads, and uglies are. And that's what Howard's making me do. So, and I like using it because it's good feedback. It lets me know where I'm doing good in a game, lets me know where I'm doing, I need improvement in a game. Because again, like I said, I'm a great GM from what I'm hearing of my players, but I feel I've always got room for improvement. There's always ways I can get better. I may be a master, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect. So that's why I love using GBUs, is because it's constant feedback back and forth. And sometimes players will be like, well, I didn't like this, and I'll sit there and I'll explain why I did it or why it was that way. And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, well, I still didn't like it. Or sometimes they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And I was like, well, you're not the GM, of course you didn't know. But anyway, I'm stalling. I'll fully admit it, I'm stalling. All right, so for the Epic game, Byron's GBUs. Oh boy, here we go. All right, so good. The players. I've said it before and I'll say it again with the game. I could not have done this without the players. So my good would most definitely have to be the players, the group I picked. I handpicked them, and I picked the right damn group for this game for what I wanted to get out of it. So my good would definitely be the players. My bad, I've got three. And again, I usually try to keep it to one, but each one I think is about of equal importance. One, I could have prepped more as we were going. At the beginning, I did a lot of prepping it, and it was great. But as we were going, I know there were moments I floundered. I got off on tangents and whatnot. So I know I could have prepped better as I was going, which, again, because of my style, is something I'm constantly saying about my games. But I could have prepped better. The scheduling, as much as I picked the group because of the schedule, as with any game, scheduling was a pain in the arse. And just sometimes, and this was one of those games where I didn't really like having even just one player not there, at least unaccounted for. You know, like, cause like with you, especially when your baby was born, you told me, I mean, we knew the baby was coming. So you told me, you were like, dude, I'm not going to be as available, you know, and you and I worked something out, and that was fine. But like, you know, just, you know, if all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, I can't make it because of such and such this week, I would cancel game even if just one person wasn't there, because none of us really liked, because of the feel I was going for the game. It didn't elude itself well to having someone be, you know, on auto follow or staring at the wall, or, you know, even me or someone else NPCing them. It just, no one felt comfortable with it. Which did, of course, which is part of the reason why the game lasted longer than it did. Because, I mean, there was a span there this year alone. I think it was all the month of July. Like, we did not game at all throughout the entire month of July because of various scheduling issues. So scheduling, and then communication. The hiccups we had the most, the hurdles that we dealt with the most, was from poor communication. And I'm not saying like anyone was deliberately doing it. I'm talking like just the flat out, people just didn't understand what other people were trying to go for certain things, and they misinterpreted it, and that caused some friction. So I think, you know, that could have been handled better, or something along those lines. One of the reasons why on this podcast we're constantly like communication. So there are my bads. Overall, though, before I even get to the Uglies, I will definitely say the pros outweighed the cons for this game, flat out. I'm very happy with this game. I loved this game. I loved how it panned out. I loved how it ended. You know, every game's going to have its bads, and I understand that, but, you know, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Ugly. Kind of hard for the GM to do an ugly, because I'm the one that doles out the experience to begin with. But
You can give it to your brother. I would totally give it to your brother.
well, see, yes and no, because of the fact of Joe was only there for the one session. I mean, what he did was great.
I still think he deserves a reward, because
I do too. But in the essence of the Uglies, because see, I could actually think of probably something for every character to get one, every player to have gotten one.
Well, then do it.
All right, fine.
I understand as a GM you can't choose between your children. Then talk about how each one of your players.
Yeah, I was just saying, because I would have felt bad kind of singling someone out like this for this too. So, okay, so for you, we'll start off with you. I definitely would give one for the aid and support that you gave, not only in doing, like, helping me with the maps, but also helping bounce off with the ideas, you know, giving me, you know, just the overall help that you gave me in getting this to become what I wanted it to become. So that would be what I would give you an ugly for.
Labor of love, I promise you.
Oh, believe me, I know. Let's see. For Matt, I would give it for the fact of, even though, because first and foremost, Matt was the only character in the entire group that had no magical talent whatsoever. He was a straight fighter. Everyone else had at least some dabbling of magic or special abilities. You were a paladin, Miri was a bard, we had a sorceress, a druid, and when Liz was initially in it, she was a cleric rogue, a cleric thief, and then she had a different character, because we killed off that one character, and then she came in as another character who was a wizard rogue. So there was always someone that had some special talent or magical abilities, and Matt was just straight out fighter. And how he dealt with it, he knew his place, and of course, even fighters aren't well known for their skill points either. So, he made it a point to try to raise up certain skills so that he could use them. So he was, now granted, he contributed role playing wise as well, which was great. But, he didn't just sit there and constantly, bitch, whine, and moan. He was like, okay, this is the character I've picked. This is the character I'm playing. How can I make myself still useful outside of combat?
And he was one hell of a sailor.
Yeah, right there at the end.
Hey, he had skill points. By God, he was going to use them.
Yep. That was the thing, is like he was constantly looking for ways to be able to use his skills. And again, putting ranks into stuff that he could use. So that's what I would give him the ugly for, is definitely making the most out of being kind of the odd man out in the group in the terms of what his character could do. Let's see. With Miri, I would definitely have to give it for, I think I challenged her some with her character. Miri's was the only one that she didn't originally give me the idea for the character before the game. Miri actually played Anaya, which is an NPC I created in my Draco Terramina world way back. And I've developed the character up some. I'd used the NPC a couple of times, so I developed her up. And the NPC was designed to be a support character. She was not. She had like one spark of, one thing that could really put her in the limelight if need or wanted. It added a little intrigue, a little side quest story stuff to a game whenever I used her. But overall, she was there literally just to help the others. And when I proposed the idea, because when Miri, lost her job and was able to join, I was, she didn't know what kind of character she was having. I was like, actually, I've got an idea. I think you could do her really well. And I gave her the idea of Anaya, and she was like, that actually sounds wonderful. Let's go for it. So, but I also know that with the type of person Miri is, Anaya does border on some stuff that Miri is either sometimes uncomfortable with or just not familiar with. So I know I was kind of pushing her boundaries a bit, which I like doing with some of my players. I do it with Puff all the time. Puff will actually sit there and sometimes just be like, Byron, make me a character, make it, and make it something new, challenge me. And I'll be like, all right, fine, here. So I would definitely give it for Miri for letting me be like, okay, here's the character I think you'd be really good at. I'd like to see in this game. And I will even say this. Miri played the character so well, I don't think I can use her as an NPC again. Because Miri
she did a good job.
Yeah, she did so well that I don't think I could use that character as an NPC. I'm gonna have to come up with another one. Because I don't think I could do it justice. After what Miri did, I was like, I don't think I could do this.
Now, wasn't she posting up actual bardic works in character on
Yeah.
Like that to me, like she actually was writing sagas and poems and
she is a bit of a writer, and I think she even said that she'd never done that for a character or a game before.
And it was good stuff too. Like I was reading those, and talk about getting drawn into the universe, actually having the bard actually write songs and sagas and stuff like that, and posting them up like in character stuff. It was really amazing.
Yeah. So that's definitely what I would give Miri's ugly for. Pardon me.
Cough still killing you, dude.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know what I'm going to do about it, just considering everything else I was telling you about earlier. Let's see. I've done you, Miri, Matt.
There would be Puff, and then
Puff, Allison, and Liz. I still need to get. Well, I can do Jay a bit too, because Jay, though was playing an NPC, he did play enough, I think. And everyone loved his accent when he was actually speaking as the character. He had this outlandish, British accent type thing going on for the character, which everyone loved. But I would actually have to give it for Jay for keeping me on my toes, because I had specifically told Jay how I wanted him to react when he first saw Puff's character because of backstory things. And then he completely did almost something entirely different. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? That is not what I told you to do. And he said something, and he said something completely different. I'm like, God damn it. So I had to literally sit there and roll with it and how change what I had planned to be able to fit what he did and still get the effect I wanted. So sometimes I'm like, Jay, you girl. But I can't really necessarily say he screwed it up because it is him playing the character. You know, I gave him the character to play, and though I coached him, he whether forgot or decided to go a different route, I don't know, but he did, and I had to deal with that.
And the other players liked it.
Yeah.
Wow.
They thought it was great, but I was like, because it was supposed to be a foreshadowing of something, but he almost like revealed it right then, and I'm like, oh god damn! So I really had to be on my off the cuff A game with that to deal with that. So that's what I would give it to Jay for. For Allison, this one's tricky. Well, okay. I could think of a couple of things. First of all, Allison was one of few of the players that really did her research for her character in the terms of like the stats and abilities and spell, because she played a druid. She knew her spells, she knew her abilities, you know,
really well.
Yeah, she knew them really well. And she tends to play druids often, apparently, and very well. And I fully have to give it to her that, though I've always had an appreciation for druids, she definitely proves to me time and time again that you don't scoff at druids.
Nope, not in Live to Tell the Tale.
Yeah, not if you're smart about it. Because a well put together druid can I mean, she was, for a druid, which is usually seen as a strictly spellcasting class, she was on the front lines with you and Matt.
Flying Super Kitty.
Yeah. So that's what I would give her the ugly for, is knowing her shit and taking a class that normally is one of those that, you know, being a spellcaster, they're seen as sometimes squishy and not a frontline warrior, and proving that you can do it if you know what you're doing. So,
you know, I have to say something. Each of us something. I mean, everyone, Othello is amazing. Like, but I gotta say about specifically Hadassah. There was a certain, not arrogance, but there was a certain, the way she played it, there was a certain quiet pride, almost. I don't know how to describe it, but Hadassah always came off not as arrogant, but as so self-confident.
Well,
and
her backstory was that she was the shaman of her tribe.
Well, I know, but she played it.
Yeah, she played.
And she didn't talk
well.
as much as the rest of us did. That's the thing. She didn't talk as much as the rest of us did, but when she did, she carried herself in voice and in inflection and whatever. It was an interesting character. Like I you know, Hadassah was always but she was never an outsider. She carried herself with a certain amount of pride, but without arrogance. What I'm saying is, she played the character in such a way that in few words she made it incredibly memorable.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you know, knowing her abilities, things like that, the way she played her stats really did. I mean, it was really Kieran had a great deal of respect for Hadassah, all of his friends, but Hadassah was always sort of, like I said, she never talked much.
Mm-hmm.
But when she did, we all listened. Anyway, I just thought I would say that because it's not because, you know, I mean the rest of us are kind of flashy. I mean, me and Othello are always up there smashing things, and Anaya is singing her thing out, and Ella's blowing stuff up, you know, whatever. But Hadassah was just quietly doing her thing, but she did it with such poise.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right, now you got Puff and
Liz.
And
with Puff, as I actually kind of described a little before when I was going over with Mary, Puff I'd have to give it to because Puff lets me use her character. She lets me use her. Gladly sometimes, which on the one hand shows a bit of trust and also shows, I guess, what her opinion of me to let me do stuff to her character and have, because like the whole reveal that she was actually the granddaughter of the Golden Empress herself, and when Dharma Gorgonoth killed the Golden Empress, she was the heir to the throne. She had no clue. She had no idea about it. I did not. Oh God, I had to bite my tongue sometimes to keep. And that was actually what Jay almost revealed, too soon, because I was using his character because he was a dragon in disguise, to help kind of start foreshadowing that. And he almost let it drop like all. And that's why I was so pissed. I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Because I had been building this up from the day one. She had no clue, and I know I can do stuff like that with Puff. Because like there are some players that's like, well, that's not part of my backstory. That's not where I wanted to go with this character. Puff was very much just she lets me have full reign on screwing with her character with stuff like that. And so that's definitely what I would give her ugly to for that is for,
Can I just
for
say
letting
one other thing about
do
Puff?
stuff like that.
Can I say one other thing about Puff?
Sure.
Super fan. I gotta say, there were some periods of time, and it's a long running game, and there were a couple of times where I made the point to you that she was doing stuff online and keeping the internet going.
She
and
definitely,
it's always good to have at least one.
Go ahead.
It's always good to have at least one person, one of your players in your party that has that enthusiasm. That's an infectious enthusiasm is what I would call it.
She pun intended. She was definitely the flame of passion that helped keep the game and keep the group interested and going. And I say pun intended because she was playing a freaking fire dragon sorceress.
And it didn't matter if she was the one on the front lines talking. It doesn't matter if she spent half the game her character not even in the limelight. She was always enthusiastic and happy no matter what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. I mean, it brought a positive, it brought a necessary positive attitude to the group, which helped the rest of us. I mean, and there were times I honestly believe that when people be tired or hungry or whatever. There are a couple times in the game where Puff literally carried us just with her spirit.
Yep.
So that was I just had to say
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Because I remember mentioning it to you in the past, and like you actually, because because the whole Facebook post thing, she was just blowing up Facebook, keeping us excited. So cool.
Yep. So and then to Liz.
Oh, Festia.
Yeah, and Tass, because we did bring Tass into this too. But it's actually kind of interesting because I was really sad that Liz didn't make it through the entire game. She actually eventually dropped out for various reasons, and I had to NPC her character there at the end. Honestly, though, and this is going to sound really weird, but I do actually have to give her the ugly for being the stab of the real in the game, in the sense of she was playing the character. She had her initial character, and she was initially kind of excited about the character, but as the game was going, she got less and less interested in it, and told me. She came to me. She told me. She was like, I'm not really feeling this character anymore. I've had some people try to grit their teeth and bear through it, and of course makes them not feel it at all, and then that does start bleeding over to the rest of the characters as well. They start feeling it too. And she was just like, I'm really not feeling it. I kind of want to ditch this character. And I was like, well, we can kill her off and play something else. And
the way you handled it, and the way the other party members responded to her character death versus the player.
Yeah, it definitely added something to the game too.
It did. I mean, carried the sword of Festia into the final battle. Yeah,
Liz. Even with Liz dropping out of the game entirely, she still had a legacy in the game, which I thought was very was very touching. But yeah, I would actually have to give her the ugly for that. The fact that she was like, she was all for the idea and what I was trying to do, but she was like, I'm not really feeling this. Let me try another character. We did. She wasn't even really feeling that character after a little while, and so finally she was like, I need to bow out for, she had some personal reasons as well as, just not kind of feeling it either. And I was like, as much as it pains me, obviously I'm not going to force you to do it. Okay. the fact that she actually did come and talk to me and tried to work with me with it is what I'm giving her the ugly for. So it's kind of interesting. I'm giving an ugly for someone for pretty much for dropping out of the game, but
the way they did it.
Yeah, it was the way they did it.
Yeah.
It was the way they did it, and the way she she actually did communicate with me about it. So. Because there have been sometimes she wasn't really feeling a character, and I had to pry it out of her for her to actually tell me because she didn't want to let me down. And I'm just like, if you're not enjoying the game, because I knew something was up. I mean, this is my wife. I have enough of a sense of her that I know something's wrong. But every time I was like, "Are you all right?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." And I'm sitting there, I'm like, "Bullshit," but I couldn't get the truth out of her, so it was annoying the hell out of me, and it was throwing me off of my game. I can think of a Star Wars game specifically. So finally, we had to have finally I sat her down, I pried it out of her, and then we had a not as bad of a come to Jesus meeting as that one time in North Carolina, but we did have okay, this is how Liz is feeling. She's not enjoying the game. This is why. What can we do to help her start enjoying the game again? And of course, the group, as soon as they found out, they were like, "Oh shit! Like, we're so sorry. Yeah, we can do this. We can do this." And she was like, "Oh, okay." It wasn't as bad as she was fearing, and I'm like, "That's what I was trying to freaking tell you." So I was glad that again she came. She actually did come to me and was like, "Look, I'm not feeling this," and I'm like, "Well, I talked with her. We tried to discuss some stuff, and finally she was just like, I don't think we can fix this. I need to ditch the character." And I was like, "All right, let's do that." And I made it work. Anyway, so there we go. That is
Congratulations, dude. The GBUs for the Epic game. You heard it from the GM, folks.
Yep. And I've pretty much killed my voice now. And my throat.
But it was worth it.
Most definitely. So, but yeah, let's definitely wrap this up. So, yeah, you know what the really kind of strange part of all of this is?
What?
I'm ready to fucking do it again.
I know.
As much as I'm gonna actually enjoy having a bit of a break, because again, I mean that I mentioned it to you, it felt like a weight was finally off of my mind and off of my shoulders, because I was always there was always in the back of my mind I had to be thinking about Epic Game in some shape, way, or fashion. Even if it was just, are we going to do it this week? And it was such a relief to actually be like, okay, it's done and it ended well. So, my anxieties, I could lay to rest. And I'm ready to fucking jump into it again.
Because you're a GM, dude.
Yeah.
It's the sickness.
Yep. Talk about freaking, masochist here. But anyway, I kind of like doing this podcast too.
Hey. I love the podcast, dude.
All 16 of our listeners. Anyway.
Oh, we've gotten up to 16?
Actually, we spiked at 30 one day. It was 30 hits on the blog.
Weird.
I don't know how or why, but
probably people looking for something else.
Maybe. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, what the fucks, suggestions, or even stories of great games that either ended beautifully or went crash and burn, you can email us, tweet us, comment on the blog or the YouTube videos. So, yeah. So thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully you will join us next week. I have been your GM Byron.
I have been your co-host Howard.
And just remember the motto of Ropai Gamma is roll high, play well, play hard.